Welcome to the House Committee on Corporations. Today is Monday, April 5th, 2021. We're in the House Lounge. Will the clerk please take the roll? Chairman Solomon? Here. First Vice Chair O'Brien?
Here.
Second Vice Chair Caldwell?
Present.
Representative Casey? Representative Chippendale?
Is there something going on in the House Lounge?
Representative Fenton Fung?
5?
Representative Hawkins?
Present.
Representative Kazarian?
Here.
Representative Kennedy?
Present.
Representative Charlene Lima? Representative Stephen Lima? Representative Phillips?
Present.
Representative Potter?
Present.
Representative Serpa? Representative Shellcross Schmidt?
Present.
And Representative Fenton Fung.
Present.
Chairman, this is quorum. All right, so we have 8 bills on the calendar here today. Ask for a motion to hold all bills for further study.
So moved, Chairman.
Made by Vice Chair O'Brien, seconded by Representative Potter. Will the clerk-
Chairman, this is Rick Casey. I'd like to second that as well as be included as present, please.
All right, it's seconded also by Chairman Casey, and have his presence recorded. Will the clerk please take the roll? Chairman Solomon? Yes. First Vice Chair O'Brien?
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Caldwell?
Yes.
Representative Casey?
Yes.
Representative Fenton Fung?
Yes.
Representative Hawkins?
Yes.
Representative Kazarian?
Yes. Sorry.
Yep. Representative Kennedy?
Yes.
Representative Phillips?
Yes.
Representative Potter?
Yes.
Representative Shellcross Smith?
Yes.
Chairman, the motion passes 11 to 0. All right, so all bills are up for further study, which means that, hold on a second, we'll have an opportunity to listen to it. Who's on there?
Chairman, this is Rep. Charlene Lima. I didn't hear my name on them.
Representative Lima, can you repeat that?
I think somebody has a microphone. We're getting
Chairman,
background
please,
noise.
I think you're good right now. If you could repeat that?
No, I didn't hear my name in the last roll call.
Would you like your vote recorded in the affirmative and your presence marked here?
Yes.
So ordered. All right, so we have 8 bills on the calendar today, and we have a lot of testimony in front of us. I would request that the witnesses try to keep their testimony down to 3 minutes or less, and only add what hasn't been provided by written testimony. We've received a significant amount of written testimony as well. The first bill we will take up is by Representative Camille Vella-Wilkinson. Chairman Wilkinson, if you could put your microphone on. This bill is 6188, an act related to motor and other vehicles, Rhode Island salvage law. Chairwoman Vella-Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 6188 would provide that if an insurance company taking possession of a motor vehicle that's been declared a total loss is unable to obtain a certificate of title for that vehicle, the insurance company or its agent may, upon satisfaction of certain conditions, apply for and obtain free and clear of all liens and claims of ownership a salvage certificate of title in the insurance company's name without delivering the certificate of title to the Division of Motor Vehicles. So, ladies and gentlemen, House Bill 6188 actually solves several obstacles in Rhode Island with where there's no current remedy that are critically needed for insurance and vehicle salvage industries. The language provides a process for insurance companies to obtain the title to a total loss vehicle when they've paid the claim but have not received the negotiable title documents from the owner. This actually leaves the insurance company with a vehicle where they have indemnified the owner and own, yet it cannot be legally transferred of the vehicle. This bill proposes to fix this in the current statute with similar language that's currently in effect in 40 other states. House Bill 6188 also provides for a means of disposal of vehicles that are abandoned to facilities which currently have limited options, specifically allowing for disposal of cars. It's not that it happens continuously. It is uncommon, but when it does happen, then the auto salvage industry and the insurance companies need to dispose of the units, and this is a way to ensure it's completed in an effective way while also protecting our consumers. I do have others that are going to be witnesses and speak on behalf of this bill, and I'll leave them to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Excellent. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, Chairwoman Wilkinson. We're going to go to the first witness, who is Bill Walsh from the Insurance Auto Auctions. Bill, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Bill Walsh on behalf of Insurance Auto Auctions, here in strong support of the legislation. We very much thank Representative Ella Wilkinson for her sponsorship, and she did a great job laying out the core parts of this bill. The intention behind it is really just to add some clarity to the current salvage processes that is leaving many of these folks with cars on hand that they can't clear title to, and it's just becoming a significant barrier to the operation of these businesses. And I know, Mr. Chairman, you worked on other issues as it relates to how this happens in abandoned boats in the maritime world with our marinas as well. So it's a process that we're just trying to help clean up the titling process. And so we believe that, by enacting this, which many states has been accomplished, as was noted by Representative Ella Wilkinson, this is something that helps us get down to business and allow for the process to play out. We are aware in our communications of some of the concerns with the Department of Motor Vehicles. We very much appreciate Director Craddock's engagement with us on the issue, and we're happy to work in a collaborative manner to iron out the particular details. With that, respectful of your lengthy agenda, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Representative Phillips.
Mr. Walsh, I'm reading the bill again. I read it quickly a while ago, and I'm reading it again. Can you just take us step by step? The insurance company pays off the lien holder. Let's say it's a lien holder and not just an outright owned by a consumer. And the lien holder sends the title and releases the title to who? The insurance company or the consumer?
Thank you very much, Representative. I think the instance where this is appearing most is where the insurers are actually finishing the process and paying off the claim and taking possession of, or are already in possession of, a vehicle that's in disrepair. And in order to finish the paperwork aspect of it, there's gaps in whose incentives there are to actually help us literally move the title from one to the other and get it through the required steps that are currently in law. So I would say the instance that's happening most is where we've already helped pay off the claim in certain ways, but we're still holding the vehicle, and we're stuck at that point to not finish the full going out to auction at that point. So it sits in our yard, and I'd say that's the issue we're really trying to hone in on.
Okay, so going back to the same question, the insurance company pays off the lien on it. The lien holder sends the title to the owner of the vehicle because they have to sign the back of the title over to the insurance company, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And that's where the holdup comes, is trying to get the car owner to release the title to the insurance company, if I'm reading it correctly.
That is one of the scenarios. There's other scenarios whereby we've become in possession of it, and I think some of these concerns are laid out in the letter from IAA. So I would certainly let the experts speak more specifically on that. But I think you're raising one of those scenarios that we're trying to address.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. We have received written testimony in favor from the APCIA. Copart in favor, and then we received written testimony against from the Department of Motor Vehicles. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 6188. The next bill we will go to is House Bill 6141 by Representative Schmidt. This would provide that original equipment manufacturers of agricultural equipment would provide independent service providers repair information and tools to maintain and repair electronics of the agricultural equipment. Representative Smith.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee colleagues. I present 6141 right to repair legislation. This would allow farmers to repair their own equipment by accessing the information they need to do the repairs. This would save them time, save them money. For the farmers who work 24/7, put the food on, vegetables on our table, and certainly are running labor-intensive small businesses. How I got involved, actually, a gentleman who lives in Lincoln contacted me in January. He's a family farm, and typically it was June he began his harvesting and his tractor broke down. He found out he had to have paid to get it towed, to get it fixed, so he had to pay the towing fees, he had to pay the amount of time it was there, and then of course, like anything else, it was held up for weeks at a time, so he kind of lost his whole season, and it was years ago, but he remembers that, and he wanted to really give a strong shout out to farmers in doing this type of work, and he's hoping that this bill would stop the whole process. An example of a harvester, which I'm learning all these farming words, it's a piece of equipment which has 125 different computer sensors. If an error occurs in one of those sensors, farmers do not have immediate access to the manufacturer's diagnostic software to repair and fix the equipment. Thus, as we know in Rhode Island, farming is seasonal, so the window of opportunity for a lot of farmers disappears. It could affect their whole summer, their whole crops. Simple repairs are unrepairable because a farmer needs special software to fix the farm tools and the vehicles. In past years, farmers did their own repairs on their own land. Now it's an expensive process, towing and waiting in time for it to be fixed. The software problem allows manufacturers to take control of the repair, and it becomes very expensive for farmers, and the cost trickles down right to our tables. I read an article that was given to me by the Rhode Island Farmers Bureau, Vice, in 2018, because it's a problem across the United States. Decision makers sat down and came up with an agreement on both sides, and the manufacturers said by January 21 they would have something for the farmers to access so they could fix the tractors and other equipment on their land. But it's April and this has not happened. There's going to be experts from the Rhode Island Farmers Bureau, so I ask you to ask all the questions about farming because I'm in childcare, but I'm very honored to be putting this bill forward. So I ask you to support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the sponsor of the bill? Seeing none, we're going to go to the witnesses. The first witness we have is Wayne Salisbury from Salisbury Farm.
I know.
Wayne, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony.
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is Wayne Salisbury from Salisbury Farm. I support this bill. It seems over the last few years that the big corporations have sort of limited what you can do yourself and insist that or basically insist, because you can't get the codes and stuff, basically insist that you hire them to come do the repairs. Many farmers have people on call that are equally good mechanics, but they can't do the work because they can't get the special codes and so forth that are necessary on the new equipment. I think Heidi Quinn is going to mention, or has already mentioned, that a few years back, there was an agreement that said by 2/21 they were supposed to make the information available, but they never had. Right now, we've got an excavator sitting in my yard that we're having that problem with, and we're eventually hoping to work ourselves around it. But it would be really nice if you could look at a diagram or look at the different codes and the computer technology to help you out. So I support the legislation, and I hope the committee approves it.
Thank you, Representative Salisbury. So the issue with your particular excavator, is it that you can't connect the computer to the excavator, or is it that it provides codes that are just unreadable?
Well, you can't connect it to the, unless you have the proper codes, you can't connect to your own computer. They do sell a package to people that are really large in size, and those things are thousands of dollars. But for somebody like ourselves, we got two pieces of equipment that we are dealing with this kind of situation with, and it just doesn't pay us. We might as well go out and buy a new machine.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions? Representative Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Salisbury, for your testimony. I'm curious if you can explain for a layman's perspective, what are you supposed to do now when you have a piece of equipment that's broken? Is there only a manufacturer that you have to take it to have it fixed, like the original manufacturer?
Or a designated person or company from the manufacturer.
And what's the availability of being able to access those repair shops, if you will?
Well, the manufacturer's offices are available, but sometimes the time frame to get them here is excessive. It's almost like you need a specialist and you're going to go to a doctor, and sometimes it takes you 3 or 4 weeks to get an appointment.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Representative Salisbury?
Chairman?
I see Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy has a question.
Yes. Wayne, nice to hear from you, my friend. Are you specifically looking
I didn't know anybody was still alive that was serving back when I was there.
So I know
good to hear,
now,
it's good to hear your voice.
Nowadays, Wayne, you can go on to some of these home shopping channels and buy a car diagnostic tool or scanner that you can actually find out exactly what that check engine light code is supposed to be about. Are you looking for something similar to that? Do you have the ability to have some type of...
I think you're breaking up, or I'm breaking up or something, but I think it's a little more specialized than that.
Okay.
I do know that a lot of, on the older machines I have, I do go online for a lot of products, and you can still call different companies that sell the stuff, and they can make it available. It's very new stuff that you have problems getting service and getting connected with what you have to do.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
Nope. Representative Fenton Fung.
Hi, Wayne. It's Barbara Ann Fenton Fung. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I have a question for you. Currently, if you were to, say, either reach out to Milton Cat or Caterpillar, one of the big companies here, if your machine, especially in the middle of harvest season, were to break down, would they offer you a rental one while, say, your repairs were 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatnot?
You know, to tell you the truth, I don't know.
Okay.
A lot of places will, so I won't say no, but I haven't asked for anything.
All right.
And the equipment we have doing most of the work, especially during the heavy seasons, isn't under any of those kind of suppression orders. It's all a little older, maybe 10, 15 years old.
I got it. All right.
And they're just easier to work on.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Thanks for all you do.
Take care.
Thank you, Representative. The next witness we'll go to is Daniel Carson from Schmidt Equipment, Inc. Daniel, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony, and I will say that we have received your written testimony as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Daniel Carson, and I represent Schmidt Equipment. Our dealership represents John Deere, Hitachi, and Workton Construction Equipment serving Rhode Island and Massachusetts. We strive to bring our customers value in all we do. To do so, Schmidt Equipment invests significant capital each and every year to ensure our technicians have the latest safety and technology training. Deere supports the customer's right to repair and has built advanced diagnostic capabilities into our equipment that are available to the owner, dealers, or others. And for those customers who require even greater diagnostic capability, John Deere provides subscription access to Customer Service Advisor. This is a specialized diagnostic tool similar to the tools we use as a dealership to support our customers. Customers should be able to expect the same level of information across manufacturing brands. It is an appropriate solution that makes so-called right-to-repair legislation unnecessary. End users have access to onboard diagnostic tools via in-cab display, wireless interface, or electronic diagnostic service tools and training how to use both. Manufacturers and dealers also make available to customers manuals, product guides, and product service information. John Deere recommends against unauthorized modification of the embedded software code. Providing access to the source codes would not only undermine manufacturers' innovation and intellectual property rights, it would risk data privacy and allow unauthorized and illegal tampering of safety and emission requirements for the equipment. Modifications also create unknown liability issues for the individuals modifying the code. Dealers who subsequently trade in modified equipment for resale, as well as subsequent owners of modified equipment. Right to repair is complicated, yet important an issue it is. We believe the marketplace will provide the best solution to this issue. The best solutions are not likely to come via legislative mandates. For these reasons, we oppose the right to repair legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we will go to Daniel Mustaco from Outdoor Power Equipment. Daniel, you may proceed with your testimony. You're up before the House Committee on Corporations, and I would ask if you could just lower the volume in the background as well. Daniel? Daniel?
Chair Solomon?
You may proceed with your
Chair
testimony.
Thank you. Chair Solomon, Vice Chairs O'Brien and Caldwell, members of the committee. My name is Daniel J. Mustaco, and I represent the Alexandria, Virginia-based Outdoor Power Equipment Institute as its Vice President of Government and Market Affairs. Today I testify to express our industry's opposition to HB 6141 on behalf of our association's 100-plus U.S. manufacturer members. We are also members of the coalition opposed to illegal tampering, which has expressed its opposition to this legislation as well, and will testify today. OPEI is an international trade association representing the manufacturers and suppliers of non-road gasoline-powered engines, personal transport and utility vehicles, golf cars, and consumer and commercial outdoor power equipment. Such products include lawnmowers, garden tractors, trimmers, edgers, chainsaws, snow throwers, tillers, leaf blowers, and other related products. OPEI member companies and their suppliers contribute approximately $16 billion to U.S. GDP each year, and OPEI members currently distribute their products across states through a diversity of retail outlets, including independent dealers who are authorized to sell and service their equipment through a contractual arrangement.
Daniel, we've received your written testimony. If you could just add anything additional as to how this legislation would specifically affect your organization.
Well, in my written testimony and materials, there's two things I really like to highlight, and the first would be that this legislation risks impairment of product safety controls and creates the potential for unsafe products. And the improper modification of software risks making OPE products non-compliant with applicable safety standards. A primary example is the potential for impairment of operator presence controls, which protect the operator of equipment from injury by disabling powered components when an operator is not actively controlling the equipment. Other examples common to industry products are machine controls for product speed and power, direction, steering, and braking, as well as the attempted modification of or tampering with lithium-ion batteries, which are increasingly powering products, and those types of power sources are not amenable to any form of repair. The second thing I'd like to stress and highlight is that the legislation would risk impairment of product emission controls, as has been stated, and violates federal law. Where applicable, outdoor power equipment is subject and compliant to product air emission regulations, which is governed by the machine's electronic software controls. HB 6141 risks potential modifications and/or tampering, which compromises air emission controls and compliance with the law. So for those two very fundamental reasons, our industry opposes this legislation, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Representative Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Daniel, I'm confused now. You're telling me that by letting people have the software that will let them access and repair the vehicles when it's malfunctioning, it's going to tamper with the settings? Are you trying to tell us that your equipment is that easy to tamper with and not be able to just go back and let them draw out the codes that they need to repair it?
No, I'm saying that the equipment under this legislation and the additional tools and potential codes that it would require are provided could give someone the capability to make improper modifications that make the equipment unsafe. And in the case of controls that control the emissions of, say, a small engine, those things are actually illegal, and the tampering could make the product non-compliant with federal and state laws.
All right, now so your equipment is not the same type of computer access that manufacturers of automobiles and trucks are. Is that what you're trying to say then? Because usually what happens when a dealer, a repair shop, or an individual gets the code readers, they can retrieve the codes that are malfunctioning, be able to clear those codes so that after they repair the vehicle and put it back on the road. And I'm assuming, by knowing the industry a little bit, that the same should hold true to off-road equipment and farm equipment and industrial equipment. Is that when they get the tools that you're talking about, they're able to access the codes, figure out what is wrong, whether it be, a sensor of some sort, or maybe, electrical product that's malfunctioning. They can get the product, put it in, clear the code, now they can run their vehicle or their piece of equipment again. Am I under the wrong assumption?
Well, I think that those that are qualified to make such repairs make those repairs, and working with the manufacturer, they have the tools they need to make those repairs safely. And I mean, we are not automotive manufacturers. It's very different industry. So, the comparison of us to say the automotive industry is, we are a much different industry. Our equipment is very diverse and different, but the types of repairs you're talking about are handled certainly by qualified dealers and service organizations that are enabled to do the repairs.
So just to add to that, so if you were to send someone, if one of your manufacturers were to send someone out, would they have a code reader to read a check engine type of light?
I can't answer that question, sir. I
can't answer
don't
it because
know.
you don't know it, or because you can't
No,
answer it?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Are there any further questions for the witness, Representative Potter?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question. Sir, I'm reading your written testimony, and you mentioned in here that you believe the solutions to the issues that we're hearing about from farmers are left to the private market. What are those solutions exactly, or just speculatively? Can you elaborate?
Well, I think generally, Representative, I think generally speaking, in the materials that I've provided, certainly the market provides well for the repair and service of products across, like I say, a very diverse retail chain for the types of equipment our manufacturers and members make. The market works quite well. So whether that's through dealers or various types of retailers across the United States, working with the OEMs directly, the repair needs of consumers are handled adequately and effectively, and keep the equipment performing the way it's supposed to perform and safely.
Are there any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we will go to Alan Shafer from the Diesel Technology Forum. Alan, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony.
Don't give him a third chance.
Alan? Okay. The clerk will go to the next caller. We'll go to Natalie Higgins from the Equipment Dealers Association. Natalie, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony.
Greetings, honorable committee members. My name is Natalie Higgins. I'm the Vice President of Government Relations for the Equipment Dealers Association. I'm happy to be here today. EDA and its regional partner, the Northeast Equipment Dealers Association, are members of the coalition opposed to illegal tampering. Our coalition consists of around 30 stakeholder groups representing diverse industries, including the Portable Rechargeable Battery Association, the Remanufacturing Industries Council, the National Association of Landscape Professionals, as well as many off-road manufacturer and dealer associations. Together, we are unified in opposition to HB 6141, which would allow for unfettered access to the software that governs safety, security, and in the case of engine-powered products, emissions technology on many products manufactured and sold by our coalition members. If enacted, this legislation would pose serious safety, security, and environmental risk. Many of EDA's members are testifying today. I know we already had one equipment dealer testify, and additional will follow, so I'm not going to elaborate too much more on those concerns, but I have submitted written testimony in addition, so for those of you who are interested in further detail, please consult that. At EDA, our members and their customers have a shared desire to minimize downtime and to maximize productivity. This is part of the reason why our industry has invested so much capital in cutting-edge proprietary innovations that incorporate the latest technology, training, and support for end users. What this means is that the diagnostic tools that the first testifier said that he needed are currently on the market today. I believe what we have is a bit of a disconnect between our educational process of our customers and letting them know what we have developed and are making available through our OEMs and our equipment dealers to provide them with the very best DIY resources that they can have. So, in conclusion, proponents of this legislation are advocating for unfettered access to software that governs the safety and emissions features that are in the products sold by our coalition members. Simply put, the unintended consequences of HB 6141 are immense and have considerable risk considering today's technology and the fully autonomous technology that is right around the corner. On behalf of EDA's members and of the coalition opposed to illegal tampering, we ask you to vote no to HB 6141.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Chairman Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going back to questions that have been asked before. I see written testimony, and it seems like everybody is talking about impair operator presence control, modifying lithium-ion batteries, etc. Are you trying to tell us that your software is that easy to break into, that people can modify the software with just the tools that are to drive out the code so they can repair them?
I'm not a software expert by any means, Representative, but certainly the issue is that we certainly support our customers' right to repair, and we are providing all of the diagnostic and repair tools, but embedded code is not one of the things that's commonly used for repair. And so that is not one of the things that we are willing to provide because of the Clean Air Act obligations and the safety risks that are associated with access to embedded code. So again, we are providing certainly access to everything they need to diagnose and repair equipment, but we are not willing to provide embedded code. So there may be some nomenclature perhaps causing some confusion, but certainly we support our customers' right to repair. We want to provide access to all of those diagnostic codes without providing access to the embedded code.
I don't know if this bill is asking them to release the embedded codes, only the diagnostic so they can repair them. I didn't see that in any of the testimony, and I think you guys are reading into it more than you should be. With that,
it says embedded software. If you look at the 4th page of the bill, Representative,
Yep.
It specifically calls out embedded code. And if you also look at the section 6-58-4, where it's talking about trade secrets, when you go and you cross-reference that section, you cross-reference it with the definitions of trade secret, or with, documentation, it's clear that trade secrets come subjective to, when you're looking at this from a statutory interpretation perspective, it comes subject to making that documentation available. So I think there's certainly maybe some confusion, maybe there could be some things cleaned up, but again, I think the unintended consequences of this bill far outweigh its benefits because the information, the diagnostic and repair information is already being made available. And all this is likely to do is confuse consumers as to what they should or shouldn't be doing when it comes to embedded code.
Okay, I think maybe what they're using the phrase embedded software instead of diagnostic software, as I'm used to it being called. So I think that if you guys will get together with the sponsor and the person that was asked the sponsor to put the bill in, maybe you can come up with some language that might be amenable to everybody.
Chairman
We certainly would welcome the opportunity to consider.
What was that? Could you, I'm sorry, Natalie. Could you continue?
Oh, I was saying we would welcome the opportunity to continue conversations. We want to be as transparent and supportive of our customers as we can.
Yeah, but I would concur with Chairman Phillips on that assessment of everything. So if you could do that, go from there. Representative Potter.
Thank you, Chairman. Natalie, just a quick question. To the best of your knowledge, has this legislation been passed in any other state?
No. It has not passed a single chamber, to the best of my knowledge. We've been working on this issue for about 5 years. There has been a referendum related to on-road, which passed in Massachusetts in 2012, I believe. But other than that, since that time, we've seen roughly 120 bills. Sorry, I don't have the latest count, but it's over 100 unique bills in 30 different states, and not a single one has passed a single chamber because of the significant public policy issues surrounding this.
So that brings me to another question. If it's been introduced in 30 states, I would be inclined to lean towards this being a pretty significant issue that's actually burdensome to farmers. Do you have any ideas for how that situation can be rectified? We heard from one farmer earlier who said that there's a very long wait for him to be able to actually get access to a mechanic. Is there anything that the industry is working on to make that more accessible?
Yes. Well, 2 points of clarification. When I said over 100 bills, those bills in generality, I'm speaking about them in generality. Some bills are only related to things like medical devices. Some are only related to consumer products. So we've seen dozens and dozens of iterations of bills, going from very, very broad to very, very narrow. So certainly when it comes to agricultural equipment specific bills, there has been only a very few of those types of bills introduced. So I just as a point of clarification. But subject to that, again, we recognize as an industry that we need to provide our customers with what they need. And so to that end, in 2018, EDA and the Association of Equipment Manufacturers partnered together to enter the Statement of Principles, which was specifically designed to enhance the repair and diagnostic offerings to customers. And you can learn more about that on our website. But the point being, we have recognized that this is an issue. We have stepped up as an industry. You can find for all of the major manufacturers their specific offerings with respect to repair and diagnostics. So we've heard our customers. We're rising to the occasion, and I think right now the most important thing is for us to continue to extend that outreach to our customers and to educate them about all the offerings that are available to them, because we do have certainly some premium products on the market, but short of that, if a customer just needs a single manual or is savvy enough to use their cell phone, we have dozens of apps available at no charge that they can utilize for that repair and diagnosis process. So again, I agree with you, and frankly, it's an education that we have to keep working on as an industry.
All right, are there any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, we'll go to the next witness, Michael Mckenna from the United Agriculture and Turf, New England. All right, Alan Shafer from the Diesel Technology Forum. Alan, you may proceed with your testimony.
Hello, this is Alan Shafer.
Yes, you may proceed with your testimony before the House Committee on Corporations.
Thank you very much. I'm Executive Director of the Diesel Technology Forum based in Frederick, Maryland. We're representatives of manufacturers of diesel engines and equipment. I'm here today in opposition of House Legislation 6141, the Agricultural Equipment Right to Repair Act, because if it is enacted, I think it has the potential to make Rhode Island's air dirtier, not cleaner, jeopardize heavy equipment safety for both farmers, service technicians, and the public that share the roads, and also facilitates a practice that is in clear violation of the Clean Air Act. Diesel powers most all large farm tractors and machines today thanks to its unique combination of efficiency, power, durability, and reliability. Over the last 2 decades, manufacturers have invested billions of dollars to reduce emissions and meet federal clean air requirements. And today's new tractors achieve near zero emissions thanks to some complicated emissions control technology that treats the exhaust as well as some highly integrated engine emissions control systems. These advances in lower emissions are a key part of Rhode Island's Clean Air Plan and maintaining progress towards achieving the national ambient air quality standards. The legislation is seeking to provide right to repair opportunities could also be entitled right to tamper because it seeks to legitimize and facilitate the modifying of farm equipment being sold as boosting performance for pennies on the dollar, this compared to the cost of buying higher capacity equipment. In fact, this practice may void the equipment's warranty along with insurance agreements and is also illegal in the United States. The Clean Air Act requires manufacturers to build in base-level tampering safeguards in their emissions control units and engine computers. Restricting access to this software defines the machine's emissions performance and is part of these base-level safeguards put in place to meet the requirements of the Act.
Alan, if I may stop you for a minute.
Yes.
So you're saying that you can't alter it, but is it where you can diagnose it? Would they be able to diagnose it without altering it?
There are a whole range of already built-in systems that alert the operators to various needs of the emissions control systems. For example, some large tractors use selective catalytic reduction systems that require the regular replenishment of diesel exhaust fluid, and failure to refill that fluid can result in the engine being derated and ultimately, if you ignore it completely, shutting down. So there's already a whole host of self-diagnostic, and I don't want to call it idiot lights, but warning lights on the dash that do direct operators to seek maintenance or to replenish, in that case, the supply of diesel exhaust fluid.
Alan,
So there are already a range of indicators there.
I understand with the diesel exhaust fluid, it's like saying a low oil light or something like that, which is easy to replenish. But you did say that sometimes it throws a maintenance required light. Is that something that's able to be diagnosed by an individual if they were to hook it up?
Manufacturers are providing a whole range of tools and manuals and training to their technicians as well as others to be able to understand what the problems are with these systems. The issues with the emissions control part, however, is there's so much feedback from sensors and other things tied into the engine computer, and these are safeguards built into the Clean Air Act. So, for example, if someone wanted to, let's say, take off their particulate filter, that would be in violation of the Clean Air Act, but it would also probably boost their performance a little bit. But there would be no indication that that had taken place other than to see various warning codes inside the system's computer. So people that would want to try and bypass that would create really unsafe conditions, not only for themselves, but anybody else who might own or operate that tractor, because they wouldn't know what kind of condition it might have been altered to. So I think once you get in there and open the door to folks, certainly they can diagnose that there might be a bad NOx sensor, for example, or some other item that would need repair or attention. But you can also use that information in a nefarious way to boost the performance of the tractor, defeat some of the emissions control systems as well.
But don't you have to have technology to actually manipulate that?
Manipulate, you would have to have
a reader.
A basic scan tool or some other device that would be one that would work with that particular tractor unit that would plug in and basically give you access to understand the diagnostic codes that you'd be reading.
Yes. Chairman Phillips?
To follow up with Chairman Solomon's question, when they pull the diagnostic codes out, let's say it's a TPS sensor that's malfunctioning, are you saying that they can alter the throttle position by putting a different piece of a different part in there that I don't think is available at this point? So they're just trying to diagnose it so they can repair it and get it back working, because when it's down, they're losing money.
Well, understood. You and I both would have that as good intentions, but people will also seek to modify engine computers and do workarounds for putting performance-enhancing chips that we know are sold throughout the region into these tractors. Because let's say, for example, you have a 10-mile trip on a road till you get to the land that you're leasing, and the tractor is currently programmed, the engine computer won't let it go any faster than, let's say, 15 miles an hour. And that creates a huge traffic anxiety for you and others. So you can buy a chip that might work around that, let's say, and boost your ground speed by up to 30 miles an hour. So you can make those kind of changes with these kinds of systems that folks are selling today on the market. So that's where the concern comes in for not only the emissions side but also the safety side. We think everyone has good intentions and just wants to fix it, but as history has shown us, that is not always the case.
All right, just so I know a lot of heavy equipment operators and farmers and a lot of people that use this type of equipment, and they always trailer their equipment to the site if they're going further than maybe 2 miles. So I don't see there's any validity in the statement that says they're going to try to modify it to get up to 30 miles an hour when they're driving 10 or 15 miles. That doesn't make sense, because usually they'll trailer it so they don't have to put excessive wear and tear on the equipment.
Sure. I completely understand that, particularly in the case of Rhode Island. That may not be the case in every part of the country here in Maryland or, for example, in the Midwest, but I completely understand your point. I think it's a valid one, but boosting ground speed is not the only reason that folks would want to tamper with an engine and the emissions control piece. I think, if you want to boost the performance of the power takeoff.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
You may proceed.
We're off the bill. There's nothing in this bill about people breaking the law, and please stick to the bill itself, please.
Yeah, if we could just, we'll just wrap up this testimony, if you could just proceed with any additional thoughts on this bill.
So the other thing I would point out is the U.S. EPA Air Enforcement Division last November 2020 released a fairly substantial report that identified the incidence of tampering. And the EPA said they have reason to believe this conduct occurs in all categories of vehicles and engines, including commercial trucks, forestry equipment, and agricultural equipment. And so the EPA is well aware of the fact that these kinds of practices are taking place. And it really identifies the issue that we're trying to address.
Chairman, again, point of order. He's off the bill. He's talking about violating other laws. Anyone who violates these laws will be punished if caught. This is nothing to do with this bill.
All right. Point well taken. So I believe we have your testimony. We have your written testimony, the remainder that does talk about the EPA and everything. So at this point, I think we have beyond the 3 minutes as well, so I'm looking to my legal counsel. Thank you for your testimony on this bill.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay. Next witness we have is Michael Mckenna. Mike, you may proceed with your testimony. Michael, you may proceed with your testimony. You're before the House Committee on Corporations.
Good afternoon. How is everybody?
Good. It's just looking like we're going to be a late night. We've already been an hour on this bill, so if there's anything additional that you could add to the conversation, we have received the written testimony on it, though.
Okay. Well, my name is Michael Mckenna. I'm the Director of Aftermarket for United Ag and Turf in the Northeast. We're a John Deere dealership, 28 large, and we represent a very large consumer and commercial base in Rhode Island. We are opposed to the bill. We believe it's unnecessary. We've already heard a lot of great testimony, so I don't want to go try to stay as much on topic as we can, but bottom line is we have always and will continue to support our customers' right to repair their equipment. We just do not support the right or ability to modify their equipment. The parts, the technical manuals, the workshop manuals, the diagnostic information, and the diagnostic software are all available to end users to work on their own equipment. But what they don't need is access to the proprietary software systems, which in its current language this bill would allow, and that would allow consumers to indeed modify the equipment. In fact, less than 2% of John Deere's repairs require any actual software reprogramming. We believe very strongly that access to the proprietary software would allow consumers to illegally modify safety and emissions features, even if it is unintentional. Obviously, these safety and emissions features exist to protect the end users and follow government-mandated programs, such as the United States Clean Air Act. As you've already heard a couple of times, bypassing safety systems can result in severe injury, death, damage to property, damage to the equipment itself. And obviously, bypassing emission systems could quite literally send a piece of equipment back more than 20 years in terms of environmental damage and pollutants. And for those reasons, we are opposed to the bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. We'll go next to Heidi Quinn from the Rhode Island Farm Bureau.
Thank you.
Heidi, you may proceed with your testimony before the House Committee on Corporations.
Hi. Thank you, Chair Solomon and committee members. My name is Heidi Quinn, and I'm the Executive Director of the Rhode Island Farm Bureau. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of H6141, the Agricultural Right to Repair Act. We'd like to thank Representative Shallcross-Smith for sponsoring the bill and for reaching out to us. Rhode Island Farm Bureau has submitted written testimony, and at this time I would like to share the testimony from one of our large Rhode Island farms that was unable to testify today. And if time allows, I would then like to just touch on a couple of the points that some of the opposition has brought up.
Heidi, if you could just submit that testimony.
Yes.
Heidi, we've received the written testimony. If you could just submit the written testimony to us if there's anything additional, but what would be much more important to us is if you just provide all testimony in addition to what has already been submitted. So otherwise it would just be.
Well, this is just an email that he sent me, and he has not submitted written. This was just a story, one of the stories that he couldn't be here to speak because he's farming.
Okay, if you could keep it brief, thank you.
Yes, please. Okay, this speaks to the OPEI testimony and who is qualified to make a repair. This farmer said over the years they've had the opportunity to own equipment from a variety of manufacturers and had great success repairing their own equipment. But in the last 5 years, it's become more and more difficult to repair on their own, mostly due to the inability to access the information needed to diagnose and repair. Who the supplier and dealer is has been the greatest determining factor, much more than the brand or the color of the equipment. It's reinforced their purchasing habits to primarily purchasing equipment from dealers or suppliers who are willing to share the necessary information needed and when it is needed. A perfect example for them was that a skid steer they purchased recently, new from a local dealership, was brand new purchase, first time from this dealer, first time from this brand. And when the machine was delivered as promised, it had many issues, and those were taken care of by the dealer during the warranty period. However, when the warranty period ended, they began repairing more of the breakdowns themselves. They came across a situation where they had an electronics issue. They went to the service manual, which they had purchased with the machine, as they do with all the equipment that they buy. They were surprised to see the manual did not have any of the electronic systems in it or the necessary steps to correctly diagnose it. So after many phone calls, they were able to get the dealer to fax them a page that instructed how to identify the problem, and they ordered the part, but they were told that they could purchase the part and install it, but it wouldn't work because they didn't have the necessary computer to program the component. Being that programming electronic components of competitors' machines, some have the full service manuals and allow that, and some do not. And that's part of the issue here. Is this is not necessarily brand neutral. This is brand specific, some of these problems. They were irritated because they now had to go to the dealer to have them program a component that the farm had diagnosed and installed. And they just feel that as the owner of the machine, they should have the right to repair the the equipment, or decide who repairs it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next, we will go to Brent DeRozier from Milton Cat. Brent, you're before the House Committee on Corporations.
Repair the vehicle.
You may proceed with your testimony, and I'd ask if you could lower the volume in the background as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Stephen, thank you for your testimony. Next, we will go to...
Hello?
Yeah, Brent, you may proceed with your testimony.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brent DeRozier. Both my wife and I were lifelong Rhode Island residents, both graduates of the University of Rhode Island. Currently, I'm employed as the corporate used equipment manager for Milton Cat. We're a third-generation family-owned business that employs over 1,000 people throughout New England and upstate New York. The right to repair has come up in several other states within our footprint. Milton Cat strongly opposes this legislation as it risks safety features being bypassed, EPA emissions and fuel settings being overridden, and puts your overall safe performance in operation of the machine at risk when anyone other than a highly trained and certified dealer technician uses this technology. Now, I think you've heard enough about EPA and all that. I just want to give a couple of bullets on what we do to support our customers, and I hope that helps ease a few minds here today. We do offer access for a fee to electronic technicians, so that is a diagnostic tool. You plug your laptop into your computer. We have a training. The next one's next week. We will train our customers how to use that. Through that, customers can access parts diagrams, troubleshooting guides. They can either order the part online. They can pick it up in our warehouse, or that part can be shipped to their farm or their facility. As far as supporting those parts, in our nearest parts location, other than the Cranston, that's a satellite hub, we have $30 million of parts in stock. We have a 99% fill rate on those parts. And in addition to that, we have mechanics who operate our technical call center. So if you get that part, you have additional concerns, you can call, you can speak with the technician. And then it goes on and on about, we heard about towing fees and this and that. We have field service mechanics and shop mechanics. So trying to keep it brief. That's what I had prepared, and be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Representative Fenton.
Hi, Brent. It's Barbara Ann Fenton. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Brent, I have a question. If a farmer was in the middle of, say, a really important harvest season or whatnot, would you be able to provide them with a rental piece of equipment if it was something that large that would prevent them from, being successful in that season?
So to be clear, we don't sell things like harvesters, but let's say they had an excavator or a wheel loader or something. Yes, we offer rentals. We also have Milton Rents stores who do short-term rentals. We can pick the machine up and bring it to our shop, or we could send out a field service technician or use some of the remote tools that we just discussed. So we really do everything in our power to keep our customers up and running, and we call it uptime. They're not making money, we're not making money if the machine's not working.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Are there any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. That concludes the verbal
Thank you for your
portion.
time.
Thank you. All right, Mark. We have one last witness. In the meantime, though, we've received written testimony against from the Coalition Opposed to Illegal Tampering, Tom's Lawn and Garden Equipment against, Outdoor Power Equipment Institute against, Diesel Technology Forum against, Deborah Perry against, and written testimony from the Rhode Island Farm Bureau in favor. Mark, we did try calling you before, so if you could just keep your testimony brief. You are before the House Committee on Corporations.
Thank you. Hello, committee. Thanks for listening. My name's Mark Johnson. I represent Howard Johnson, Inc., a John Deere dealer here in South Kingstown, Rhode Island. While we support...
Hello?
Hello?
We can hear you now.
All right. Hi. It's Mark from...
We heard you. We heard that part, so you can just continue
All
with your
right,
testimony.
great. We do support a farmer's right to repair. However, we oppose the passing of House Bill 6141. No question, technology is much more complicated than it once was years ago. Diagnostic capabilities are available for 98% of repairs.
If you could shut down the volume off in the background, you may be able to hear us better.
There you go. Foremost is the concern for safety for our employees, our customers, and all end users of this equipment. Allowing anyone to modify factory-embedded software code will threaten that safety. As an example, a hacker could boost horsepower of a John Deere utility vehicle. This will increase the speed, but that extra speed will make the machine less stable, causing rollovers. It can also overpower the braking systems, causing even more accidents. Another example would be reprogramming emission systems on a diesel tractor engine. Deere's worked long and hard to bring their machines up to Tier 4 specifications. Allowing someone to tamper with these systems will raise emission levels, which is a violation of the U.S. Clean Air Act. These are just a couple reasons why we oppose the passing of this bill.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. And that concludes,
Thank you.
And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 6141. Next, we will go to House Bill 6051 by Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy. This bill would, bear with me, would rename the state airport in Warwick from T.F. Green State Airport to the Rhode Island T.F. Green International Airport. Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So back in September 27th, 1931, the airport was officially known as Hillsgrove State Airport, and it drew, at that time, what was considered one of the largest crowds to ever attend a public function in the country. The airport continued to be known as Hillsgrove until 1938, when it was renamed in honor of Senator Theodore Francis Green, who had just been elected to the Senate in 1936. Today, it's officially known as Theodore Francis Green Memorial State Airport. This legislation would add a couple of modifiers to that. The first is, would rename the airport to the Rhode Island T.F. Green International Airport. The goal with the name change is to support better passenger awareness of the airport's location and destinations, along with increased passenger travel. The name change will assist in marketing the state of Rhode Island to both leisure and business travelers. Currently, Green State Airport is one of only 32 airports in the United States that do not have a city, state, or region in the name of the airport. It's important that we do all we can as we return to traveling and vacationing again to help our travel and tourism economy and to build on the airport's success prior to what we had with COVID-19. Prior to that, the airport was doing quite well, and as you know, we were able to attract some international flights to the state of Rhode Island, but ultimately COVID-19 shut down our access to Norwegian Airlines as well as an affiliate of Air Canada. So by adding Rhode Island and International to T.F. Green Airport, it's part of that process to help improve the state name recognition and encourage more travel to Rhode Island and the Ocean State. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Oh, actually, it appears that Deputy Speaker Lima has a question.
Mr. Chairman, I have my hand up.
Yes, you got it.
Okay, Deputy Speaker Lima.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think this, I want to give you a little history on it, too. This is another bad decision in a series of bad decisions by RIAC and its president, Ithaca Ahmad. The first was their attempt to take T.F. Green out of our airport name a few years ago, and that failed miserably. The second was spending $500,000 to a Massachusetts company to come up with the name Rhode Island International Airport. Most recently, this bill, I submitted it last year at the request of the Speaker, and that failed because of the concern of having Rhode Island in the name. First, I had a question before I go on to the sponsor or whoever submitted the bill. Has there been another marketing study done on this name?
As far as I know, Deputy Speaker Lima, there has not been another marketing study, other than the fact that the Airport Corporation has been in contact with the chambers of commerce around the state of Rhode Island who seem to support this, as does the tourism industry.
Okay. No other airport in the country is named after a state. What do they base putting the state name on this airport, since it's not done anywhere else in the country?
I believe the fact of the matter is just because it hasn't been done anywhere else in the country doesn't make it a bad decision to do it in this particular case. Rhode Island is a very small state with just one major airport to bring traffic in and out commercial-wise. We have some more small airports in Newport, Westerly, the North Central, Block Island. They do not handle the size aircraft that come into the airport in Warwick. So By naming it after Rhode Island, I think it sets it so that, just as I stated in my earlier comments, Rhode Island is one of just 32 airports that doesn't have a city, state, or region named within the context of its official name.
Thank you. May I remind
Most
Deputy
airports,
Speaker Lima?
as you
Deputy
said,
Speaker
are
Lima.
named after a metropolitan area in their state,
Deputy
even if
Speaker
it's
Lima.
not where the airport is located. Providence is that metropolitan area of the state, and the airport corporation is, their first duty is not to market the state of Rhode Island. That belongs with the Tourism Council or the Commerce Department.
Deputy Speaker Lima, if I may just remind all the representatives in the committee right now that this bill isn't for debate right now.
Hello?
Deputy Speaker Lima, if I may just interrupt for a moment, I just want to remind all the representatives that this bill has been held for further study at this point in time. If this bill were to move, that it would be, that we would have a discussion prior to a vote being taken, but the vote to hold all bills for further study has already been taken. So if we could just limit this currently at this point to just questions for the sponsor, and we also do have a representative from the Rhode Island Airport Corporation who will be testifying on this bill, who may be able to answer some more questions, but for the time being, if we could just...
I didn't realize we had a representative from the Airport Corporation. Then I will reserve the rest of my questions for that person. Thank you.
We do, and just for discussion purposes, if this bill does end up moving forward, which we've already held it for further study, then there will be an opportunity to discuss prior to voting, whether for passage or against it. So if we may proceed to the witness, William Fisher from the Rhode Island Airport Corporation. Bill, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Bill Fisher. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I'd like to start out with some brief history. I want to touch on some points and be happy to answer any questions. First, a little history. We are in year 4 of this debate. It started in 2018 when we had a lot of feedback from our airline partners that Rhode Island was an outlier by not having a geographic name in our airport. And instead of speculating, we commissioned a study, and there was overwhelming support by Rhode Islanders to include a geographic name, and quite frankly at the time, overwhelming support in a poll to rename the airport Rhode Island International Airport. That bill had a lot of debate in 2018, and in fact, the House ended up passing that version of the bill, and it did not pass the Senate. The session ran out. Fast forward to 2019, and I want to let the committee know we come here in the spirit of compromise tonight, but the compromise actually started in 2019. We went back to Representative Lima, who was the sponsor at the time of the bill, told her we wanted to compromise, worked with her, told the Senate the same thing, and in fact the Senate passed the bill that is before you tonight, Rhode Island T.F. Green International Airport, and the House did not pass it that year, and we had feedback from the Speaker at the time, quite frankly, that he thought the name was a little long. Go to 2020, COVID. I don't need to explain that to anybody. It has set back the state, our economy, tourism, restaurants, hotels. So at the beginning of this year, as we crawl out of COVID, I went to leadership in the House and the Senate and said, it's year 4. We believe a name change can help the tourism economy. Quite frankly, our convention center is a field hospital right now. This is a sector that needs a lot of help. And I said, we don't want to argue about it anymore. If there's common ground between the Senate and the House on Rhode Island T.F. Green International Airport or Rhode Island International Airport, wherever it is you land, if we can get the bill in on both sides, great. If we can't, let's not waste our time, because quite frankly, I think the General Assembly has some weightier issues to cover. And we found common ground. We found common ground with the Speaker, and we found common ground with Leader McCaffrey on Rhode Island, T.F. Green International Airport. Some important facts. Our airport is one of the state's most valuable assets when it comes to rebuilding our economy and promoting tourism. Of the 376 primary mainland airports in the country, as defined by the FAA, meaning airports serving more than 10,000 passengers annually, only 32, including T.F. Green, do not have the city, region, state in its name. Please know, when we were flying to Dublin before the 737 MAX crisis, plenty of people were flying from Rhode Island to Dublin. But the seats from Dublin to T.F. Green were near empty. The polling in 2018 said there is a complete lack of recognition of this area, particularly with European and overseas travelers. I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman. Adding Rhode Island provides an immediate name recognition, a critical tool to market the airport to airlines. So this just isn't about increasing passenger travel or passenger awareness around the country, around the world, but allows our marketing team, our officials, to go out and lure airlines and routes here. I want to emphasize our tourism partners support this change. We all know COVID has hurt the economy. It has hurt tourism. This small change, we believe, helps. It recognizes, and rightfully so, I'll give a lot of credit to Representative Lima. She wanted to preserve the history of T.F. Green. This bill does that. Will it solve all our problems and help Rhode Island emerge from the devastating effects of COVID? Of course it won't. But we do believe it will help. It will not cost the state a dime. Now is the time to do this. Travel is making a comeback. People want to get on planes again. The summer tourism season is months away. We just added routes to Atlanta and Minnesota. Delta has returned to the airport. We're getting going again, and people want to fly again. Lastly, I would point out, before taking questions, that the Providence Chamber supports this bill, that the Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau supports this bill. I appreciate the committee's time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Deputy Speaker Lima.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know the bill has been postponed. However, I think we're hearing one side on the issue, and the public deserves to hear the other side. Bill, did you just say there are more important things the General Assembly should be doing, and yet it's very important for the economy of Rhode Island to have Rhode Island in the name of the airport? I mean,
I said there are weightier topics that we did not want to waste the General Assembly's time this session if they didn't have common ground. That was the point I was trying to make. And we were able to find common ground between Senate and House leadership and get the bill submitted. If there wasn't common ground between Senate and House leadership on this, quite frankly, Rep, we didn't want to waste anybody's time. That's the point I was trying to make.
See, I was the main voice in keeping T.F. Green in the airport, which the state has shown overwhelming support for, and I didn't hear anything about that common ground. So you had said, we had heard testimony that no airport in the country is named after a state. So what did RIAC base their decision on, and is there a study? May we have access to that?
I will happy to get you the study from 2018 that said, at the time, Rhode Islanders overwhelmingly supported including Rhode Island in the name change. We put a lot of study and a lot of analysis on that. Quite frankly, I don't think we need another study. I think if we're going to respect T.F. Green, as you have strongly suggested, and as we agree with you today, as we agreed with you in 2019, I don't think we need another study. I will say this. I understand the geographic argument you're trying to make, but Rhode Island isn't Dallas-Fort Worth. It's not Texas. It doesn't have a Houston International Airport and a Dallas-Fort Worth, all these large catchment areas. Rhode Island is, you can put it in a 30 by 70 mile box, quite frankly. And so, I'm sure there's some people in Newport who may say think they're the epicenter of tourism in Rhode Island, and we would respect that argument as there's many beautiful portions of our state. But we're trying to lift all boats here, and I think with our compact size, this is appropriate, and I think it's going to help, Representative.
I believe Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy has a question.
Yes, Bill.
I have my question. Are you on the same answer?
We can go right back to you, Deputy Speaker Lima. I think.
Okay.
Bill, a couple of things. I think you neglected to mention the city of Warwick. The mayor has come out in support of this particular name change, number one. And number two, as I sat here Googling some information, I did see that Cincinnati, which happens to be in the state of Ohio, is also known as Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Airport. So there is a state name in an airport.
Appreciate you pointing that out, Representative.
I don't think Northern Kentucky is a state. It might be part of a state, but I don't think Northern Kentucky is a state.
I think it would be fantastic if Rhode Island was the first state in the country to name their airport after the state. I think it's okay to be first, and I think with our compact size, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, the other question that I had, and actually I think Rhode Island does more harm than good because it's not a destination like Providence is. Bill, you had said that you had suggested the support for the name Rhode Island, and in your marketing study, in your poll, you have in that poll the alternative name, the metro area of Providence T.F. Green Airport, of which I might add, it's on all the airport maps as PVD. The tickets say PVD. T.F. Green Airport's website says PVD. When you land, it says Welcome to Providence. And there's a reason for all of that. It's not just because they like saying the wonderful word Providence. It's because that's the metro area, and that's the destination way to market it. So was that name included in your study or in your marketing analysis?
Thank you for the question, Representative. I'd have to look back at that. I can tell you we will share that study with you and the members of the committee and the chairman. I can tell you the feedback we had from our airline partners, particularly overseas when Norwegian was here, was that Providence was not a familiar destination. And so again, with our compact size, respectfully, I think there's greater name recognition of the state of Rhode Island than the city of Providence. Again, after the year of COVID, after what's happened to the economy and the tourism sector, I think it's important we try to get this done this year. And quite frankly, I've talked to leadership about getting it done early. I've had very encouraging conversations with Senator McCaffrey last week. We'd love to really get going on this name change and get Rhode Island positioned for the summer tourism season and help our tourism partners as they emerge from this COVID impacts.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the witness?
Bill, I just want to say that I totally disagree. If you ask someone from out of state, if you tell them you're from Rhode Island, they say, where is that? In Long Island? Is that part of New York? But as you see, even when they do the weather, they don't have Rhode Island on the map. They have Providence. Providence is the financial, cultural, so many. We have our universities. It is the metro area that is known. If you say I'm from Providence, people know where you're from. People fly from city to city. And I have heard from numerous pilots, people that Providence should be the name of the airport. Because that's what's recognizable. That's the destination. People fly from city to city. They don't fly to a state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions for the witness? Hearing none. We have received a written testimony in favor from the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce. We have not received any testimony against this bill, written or verbal. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 6051. Representative Stephen Representative Stephen Lima, would you like your votes recorded in the affirmative?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman.
So ordered. So next bill we have is is from Representative Baptista, House Bill 6065, the Unfair Claims Settlement Practices Act. This act, relative to the Unfair Claims Settlement Practices Act, would raise the appraisal threshold amount for auto insurance from $2,500 to $5,000, would require an insurance company to complete the appraisal within 4 days instead of 3, redefines fair market value to include compilations commonly used by the insurance industry, and corrects a citation regarding salvage and reconstructed titles. The first witness we have on this bill is Frank O'Brien from the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. Frank, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony on 6065.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Frank O'Brien with the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. By way of reminder, we write about 67% of the auto insurance sold in Rhode Island. This particular bill amends several sections of the Unfair Claims Settlements Practices Act. It's primarily designed to eliminate any confusion while also trying to make a couple of important changes. I won't belabor my written statement given the committee's hefty agenda. I will note that while most of the bill is clarifying in nature, there is one proposed section, and that is in subsection 25, that is likely to engender opposition. This particular provision would expand the universe of nationally recognized compilations of vehicle values, which are used in valuing total loss vehicles, to those also used by the insurance industry. Currently, they're limited to the valuations commonly used by the automotive industry. This would allow products from vendors other than Kelley Blue Book and NADA to be used. We believe that it would provide additional choices and more competition in the marketplace. With that, Mr. Chairman, knowing you have a number of other bills to go through, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Deputy Speaker Lima, do you still have your hand up? Okay. Thank you for your testimony, Frank. We've received written testimony in favor from the APCIA as well as Allstate, and that concludes the hearing on House Bill 6065. Next, we will go to Vice Chair Caldwell's Bill 6064 regarding merger and consolidation. Vice Chair Caldwell, would you like to describe your bill for us?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I introduced Bill 6064 on behalf of Secretary of State Gorbea. This bill revises the Rhode Island Nonprofit Corporation Act to include a mechanism for nonprofits to convert to or from other business types. So right now, Rhode Island law limits the types of entities that nonprofits can merge with. And this bill will incorporate model language from the American Bar Association that has been adopted by most states, and Rhode Island just has yet to act on this. And it will also allow for the same conversion process for nonprofits as business corporations currently enjoy. And I know there are going to be, I think, at least one person here tonight ready to testify on this. So they would probably be best to answer questions, but I can certainly try if anybody has any.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, thank you. We're going to go to our first witness, Ralph Kinder from the Wickford Yacht Club. Ralph's unavailable at this moment, so we'll go to Maureen Ewing from the Department of State. Maureen, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony. And if you could lower the volume in the background as well.
Oh, yep. Thank you, Chairman Solomon. This is Maureen Ewing from the Business Services Division at the Secretary of State's office. On behalf of Secretary Gorbea, I would like to thank you and the members of the committee for the opportunity to speak this evening regarding the Rhode Island Nonprofit Corporation Act. I would also like to thank Representative Caldwell for introducing this legislation. Rhode Island has a robust nonprofit sector representing about 10% of the corporations filed with the Business Services Division. Unlike in a majority of other states, Rhode Island nonprofits are able to convert to or from other business types, and other business entities are able to convert to a Rhode Island nonprofit corporation. Additionally, current law limits the types of entities that they can merge with. While this may not sound like a significant issue on the surface, adopting this legislation will allow for greater flexibility for our nonprofits. Let me provide an example of a situation that's taking place right now. In fact, the committee has received testimony in support of this legislation from the specific corporation, and we receive several similar inquiries each year. Our division was contacted by an attorney who represents a local nonprofit that was originally organized in Delaware. This means they must file 2 annual reports and pay fees in both states to maintain the corporation's good standing. For this reason, their leadership decided they'd like to convert to a Rhode Island nonprofit. However, when doing the research, they realized there's no legal mechanism in our state to do this. The only existing filing option for this corporation is to dissolve the Delaware entity and file a new Rhode Island nonprofit or redomesticate via merger. Either filing option would result in the corporation losing its 41-year corporate existence. This legislation would give the entity and other entity structures the ability to convert to a Rhode Island nonprofit without having to incur the administrative burdens and expense of closing the existing entity and forming a completely new one. Conversion would also allow the entity to preserve its original date of formation. We must do all that we can to adopt business-friendly policies and legislation. This is particularly important when an organization is simply looking to make Rhode Island its state of incorporation, or when a nonprofit and other entity structures believes merger would be financially or strategically beneficial to their mission. Secretary Gorbea's core mission is to provide comprehensive services to those looking to start and maintain a business or nonprofit in Rhode Island, and it's why she's worked to introduce House Bill 6064.
Thank you, Laura.
And before I conclude my testimony tonight, I just want to alert the committee to a situation that was brought to our attention this afternoon, that Rhode Island Manufacturers Association distributed an email to his membership asking for support in opposing a piece of legislation and erroneously attached House Bill 6064 to that email. REMA has no opposition to this legislation and has sent correspondence to correct their error. So if anyone does receive any testimony or emails regarding this, we just wanted to let you know. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to testify today and in support of House Bill 6064, and I'll answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Maureen. Yeah, if you could let the Rhode Island Manufacturers Association know to just send an email correcting that opposition. What I will ask you, though, is because this is model ABA legislation, how many states have adopted it?
So 37 states have adopted the 2018 version, or the 2008 version, of the Model Act. So we believe at least 37 other states have the ability for nonprofits to convert at this time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Chairman Phillips?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question. I see that in 1979 they had incorporated as a nonprofit in the state of Delaware, but they're still housed in Rhode Island. Is there a reason why? Is there a reason why they don't want to incorporate as a nonprofit in the state of Rhode Island?
I'm not sure what their original reason was. However, today they would like to. But they would like to accomplish that by conversion so they don't lose the history that they created. So our records show that they created themselves in 1979 in Delaware, and then qualified here shortly thereafter.
Okay, but all right, I'll just do a question offline afterwards, but I'm just curious as to why they would lose their status for the 41 years if the,
So if you start a brand new Rhode Island corporation now, you would have an effective date today. But conversion allows you, by that mechanism, to bring over your date of formation. They won't lose that date. So our records will actually show their original incorporation date.
Okay, I understand now. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. If we have any questions, we'll be sure to reach out to you. The next witness we'll go to is Ralph Kinder from the Wickford Yacht Club. Ralph, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony.
Hi there, my name is Ralph Kinder. I'm an attorney for the Wickford Yacht Club, and this legislation is I just became aware of, and in the process of trying to convert their nonprofit Delaware corporation to a Rhode Island nonprofit corporation, and was actually surprised when I noticed that your nonprofit statute did not include conversion. The Delaware corporation does allow it, and so this is going to, if this legislation goes through, it will permit the yacht club to become a Rhode Island nonprofit corporation without having to do a new tax exemption application with the IRS, and save a significant amount of burden of paperwork and expense. And so we support this legislation highly. And
All right, excellent. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. We have received...
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
So we've received a written testimony as well in favor, and that concludes the hearing on House Bill 6064. Next, we will go to House Bill 6066 by Representative Cardillo regarding distributed generation. Specifically, this act would require the electric distribution company to properly account and charge for their interconnection studies. It also requires the electric distribution company to provide evidence of its actual cost of interconnection within 90 days of completion. It would clarify jurisdictional issues related to transmission system studies and impacts. Finally, it would establish an independent ombudsman to oversee the electrical distribution company's interconnection practices. We will go to our witnesses on this bill. First of all is Hannah Marini. Hannah, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony.
Good evening. This is Hannah Marini. Thank you, committee members, for taking my testimony this evening. I understand that you guys have a long night, and I did submit written testimony, so I'll be brief in my verbal testimony. I actually just wanted to take this opportunity to discuss the main points of the bill and make sure that everyone understands why these are very essential changes to both our business, Green Development's business, and to the local renewable energy industry as a whole. So one of the things that this bill does is that it ensures that the utility company is not taking study fees for feeders and projects that they are already studying directly next door. Oftentimes we'll see that there are other companies that are applying to interconnect their renewable energy projects in a very similar area, and instead of using that information together with the utility company, they will actually they'll charge everyone the same amount of money and go through those processes separately. The other thing that this bill does, so a lot of the projects are getting assessed fees for transmission the transmission system, which these projects connect locally, and the distribution system. So these projects are getting assessed fees that the utility company has no federal authority to assess. And this will happen sometimes 3 or 4 years into a project being studied. For example, we have a project that the utility company is trying to assess a $500,000 maintenance fee for a large solar project that we're installing. And this basically just spun out of thin air last year. So they cannot charge those fees to these projects unless they have the authority to do so. We are, one major problem is that we're assessed charges with little to no detail. So this bill requires an industry standard estimate level audit and a line item budget. So this ensures that both we're able to actually see what we're being charged for in advance, and then after the fact actually see what we were charged for and the different expenses associated with it. And another quick example I can give is we had a project that was a 1.5 megawatt system. And we had a wind project, and we actually switched out the project, and we did a solar project instead. And the second time around, the utility company came back and said that it was $600,000 more to interconnect the same project. No backup, no information, just, oops, we made a mistake. We need, it's $1 million now instead of $400,000. And we don't have, without a breakdown, we have no way of saying, well, you're wrong and here's why.
Thank you.
I had one other, a couple more points. So they can't change the rules mid-project anymore. We have one project that they changed the required road width of the access road 3 times over the course of the application being assessed. And I think most importantly, this bill actually appoints an independent ombudsman. I believe in my written testimony, I used an example of the utility company being in charge of interconnecting renewable energy projects. Is kind of like a fox guarding the hen house. This is not, renewable energy is not in the utility company's best interest for their bottom line. So an independent person should be overseeing this, not the utility company themselves. And this bill actually puts teeth in. So if National Grid or the future utility, I think it's very important that this is not just a National Grid bill, their successor, their imminent successor will be held to the same standards. There are little to no repercussions for not following the rules and being good stewards of our electric system. So this actually holds the utility company accountable. And I think that's extremely, extremely important both for the current company that's in place and any successor who is interested in purchasing Narragansett Electric.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, we're going to go to the next witness, Paul Mcdonald from Teamsters Local 251. Paul, you may proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Paul McDonald. I'm Legislative Director for IBEW Local 99. We are here today to oppose House Bill 6169. We have over 800 men and women who work for 66 signatory contractors. And this year alone, we will have approximately 350,000 working hours. These are the good paying
Paul, if I may
jobs.
stop you there for a moment. We're on House Bill 6066, which is the distributed generation interconnection.
Oh, I'm very sorry, Mr. Chairman. I will just simply say we are in support of that bill, then.
Okay. We were worried there. We were worried there for a moment.
Yes, I apologize. I'm thinking of my other bill, the one that I'm really concerned about. So I apologize, sir.
Is there anything you'd like to add to 6066?
No, we're on record as a support.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good, Paul.
Thank you for the correction.
We do have you on the other bill in a few minutes. We'll get back to you.
Okay.
So
I'll get reload. I'll reload.
Okay, that concludes the testimony on House Bill 6066. We did receive written testimony in favor from the Green Development LLC, as well as Henry Boninger, and we've received written testimony against from National Grid. And that concludes 6066. The next bill we will go to is, let's see, do we have Representative Speakman on? We have, Representative Speakman, we'll go to House Bill 6169, which would, bear with me one moment. This bill would prohibit the co-location of multiple renewable energy resources on one or more contiguous parcels unless the total capacity of the co-location is less than 10 megawatts in total. The prohibition does not apply to projects that are wholly sited in preferred siting locations like landfills, gravel pits, brownfields, parking lots, and rooftops. So before you proceed, Representative Speakman, I just asked Paul Mcdonald to hold on the line while we have Representative Speakman introduce this bill.
He said he was going to reload. That makes me a little nervous, but okay. So thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. This bill deals with the siting of renewable energy resources and tries to accommodate two conflicting environmental goals: moving Rhode Island towards a renewable energy future and preserving forest land, which is important for obviously animal habitat, recreation, and sequestration of carbon. The intent of the initial site location legislation was to limit projects to 10 megawatts or 50 acres, approximately 50 acres. Developers have been, though, in several communities, co-locating projects and going above this 50-acre or 10-megawatt limit by building 10-megawatt projects on contiguous sites, thus getting up to 60 or 70 megawatts and 100 or more acres. So this bill would limit the size of projects to 10 acres and prohibit contiguous siting. And the point is to preserve forest land. And the second part of the bill would accept from that 10 megawatt limit, as you said, Chairman, when the projects are located on what are called in the bill preferred siting locations, such as landfills, gravel pits, brownfields, parking lots, rooftops, and former industrial sites. So the idea here is to both promote solar energy and to make sure and to preserve forest land. It's hard to do both at once, I understand that, and I do read in the written testimony that our friends from IBEW are opposed, and I look forward to working with them to try to find a way to do both things. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, we'll go to Paul Mcdonald from IBEW, who just got disconnected. Do you have Meg and Kerr on? All right, so we'll have Meg Kerr from the Audubon Society of Rhode Island. Meg, you may proceed with your testimony.
The second part of the bill
Thank you. My name is Meg Kerr, and I'm the Director of Policy at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, and we support House Bill 6169 for the reasons that Representative Speakman gave you in her introduction. Audubon supports the rapid deployment of renewable energy projects, but as she said, we're seeing an awful lot of these projects sited on forested, undeveloped areas, and there's also value to having forested lands for carbon sequestration to deal with climate change, but also for Audubon, we value forest lands as habitat for birds and wildlife. We're seeing an awful lot of these co-located projects. So we're seeing projects that are 30, 40 megawatts to the untrained eye, although they are permitted as separate 10-megawatt projects or less than 10 megawatts. In my written testimony, I give some examples of those. I don't need to talk about that here. We do support these larger projects in the areas that are already developed, the brownfields, the landfills. So this bill would eliminate co-location of projects in greenfield forested sites, but allow them in the already developed areas. And we believe it's an important step to eliminate these very large solar developments in Rhode Island's forested lands. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. We'll go next to Paul McDonald from IBEW. Paul, you may proceed with your testimony.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Let me apologize. My only excuse is I'm a senior citizen, so please bear with me. My name is Paul McDonald. I'm Legislative Director for IBEW Local 99, and we oppose H6169. We do have over 800 men and women working in this industry and who work for 66 signatory contractors. This year we will have over 350,000 working hours for our men and women of Local 99. Obviously, these are good paying jobs, which I always remind everybody, that's what we always talk about up at the State House, getting good paying jobs. And we oppose 6169 because we believe it would put an unreasonable prohibition on solar power. We believe that the cities and towns should decide if a project is a good fit or not. Limiting projects to 10 megawatts will drastically hinder, if not completely prevent, our state to achieve the goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030. This would hamper the growth of this industry and would only serve to put skilled workers out of jobs. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity. I know I'm between you and probably supper, so I will conclude there by saying thank you very much for this opportunity to present our position, and we ask you to oppose House Bill 6169. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer.
Thank you for your testimony. Representative Fenfung.
Hey, Paul, it's Barbara Ann. How are you?
Life is good for Paul McDonald, Representative. Hope it's well for you.
Oh, good. Question for you. How many current projects that are in the pipeline right now would this bill impact for your workers?
Well, I don't have that number, Representative. I wouldn't know that because I'm not in the field. As you know, I'm the Legislative Director, so I couldn't tell you at the moment, but I would certainly be glad to get that for you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, just to see, because I know there's a bunch that have been pre-approved, so it would kind of be interesting to see how much this would impact right away.
Well, we do have a significant amount of men and women working in this industry at the moment, and it's very good. We're very happy about that.
No, I understand, and Western Cranston seems to be the hotbed of all solar at the moment. So I'd love to see how many, not only they're in process, but also maybe in the next year, and either you or maybe even Representative Speakman, if either of you guys could figure that out. It would just be a nice thing to know as we're considering. Thank you.
We'll be glad to speak with the representative, absolutely, the lady of the highest quality.
Thank you. Are there any additional? Chairman Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Paul. How are you tonight?
I'm good there, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
You don't refer to me as Paul usually, though. I'm surprised.
I just have an easy question. I'm just trying to comprehend in my mind how big an area a 10 megawatt solar array would be. Do you know how many acres or how much land would be used to try and create a 10 megawatt solar array?
I do not. However, I happen to be in a butter in Burrillville, where I live, on a 20-acre parcel that they were building. They're going to build a solar farm that abuts all along my property, which I'm very happy to see them do, too, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, those are questions that I'm not prepared to answer, but I'm going to be getting you the answers to those things. I think they are important, reasonable questions, so I'll do my best to get you and Representative Funk the answers.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. Nice talking to you.
Thank you, sir. Always my pleasure.
Thank you, Paul. Chairman Phillips, so we did receive written testimony from the Nature Conservancy, and in it, they do say limiting system size to 10 megawatts, approximately 50 acres. So if that gives you a general idea, but that concludes the verbal portion of the testimony received on this bill. We have received testimony in favor, written testimony in favor from the Nature Conservancy, Audubon Society, And we've received written testimony against from Green Development, Hannah Marini, Angel Lopez, and then we've received testimony in favor from Grossmont, Rhode Island, with amendments. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 6169. The last bill we have...
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. The last bill that we have here today is House Bill 6067 by Representative Stephen Lima, which would... This act would add airspace to the land the Department of Transportation can acquire that is necessary for a suitable airport or to preserve, maintain, or restore an approach. Additionally, this act would add the term approach, approach zone, approaches to section 123.1. Representative Stephen Lima.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. This legislation was brought to me by the Rhode Island Airport Corporation in regards to, I guess there's some smaller airports that have some issues with trees kind of growing up too tall and getting in the way of their approach pattern. So I was asked to introduce this legislation, so this would supposedly rectify that issue that they're having. I've looked into a little bit of different stuff about with some issues with the airport approaches, and it seems that my only thing with this is airspace. When I asked why airspace, it was because they didn't want to actually take land, they just want to be able to trim the trees in the space. So that's about all I know of this bill at this point, but it seemed pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions for the sponsor? Representative Fenfong.
Hi, Representative Casey. Hey, it's Barbara Ann. A question for you on this bill here. There's, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's an issue down at the Newport Airport that's actually creating an issue with runway expansion. When we're saying that we're trimming trees, you just kind of mentioned that, would that also be the removal of a tree or just trimming of a tree?
I'm not totally sure on it, whether it's complete removal of the tree or if it was just trimming. From what I was explained to by the Rhode Island Airport Corporation, is it was on the approach pattern. I think in one of the smaller airports, I don't know if it was Westerly or if it was Newport, but one of the smaller airports, it's actually impeding planes from coming into the approach. So I didn't know, they didn't say if it was complete removal they were looking to do or just cutting them lower.
Is there testimony on this one? Is there anybody calling in?
Say that again?
Is there anyone calling in on this?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Representative, I think I'm going to withhold my question and wait for those calling in. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Is there any other questions from the committee at this time? Charlene, did I see your hand up? Deputy Speaker Lima, did I see your hand up?
No, Mr. Vice Chair.
No.
Not yet.
Is there any other question from any representative? Seeing none. Lou, you don't see anything, do you? No. All right, we'll move on to the witness list. John Goodman from the Rhode Island Airport Corp.
No, Mr. Vice Chair. Not yet.
Can you turn down your, John, can you turn down your TV, please?
Yes, that's all set.
Thank you. The floor is yours, John.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee. My name is John Goodman, and I serve as Assistant Vice President for Public Relations at the Rhode Island Airport Corporation. And we truly appreciate the challenges that legislators face to balance all parties and interests. And as illustrated in the background submitted to the committee on this bill, we at RIAC face a similar challenge in working with communities, airport stakeholders, airport advocates, local aviation-related businesses, as well as the travel and tourism industry. And we know we try to balance the needs and concerns of all who recognize that there is a benefit to a statewide airport system. Indeed, we're often reminded by the representatives of the town of New Shoreham that Block Island depends on the airport link with Westerly Airport as a lifeline for health and safety. But of course, we have an obligation to ensure that all airports are safe and free of airspace obstructions. So on behalf of RIAC, while we realize that there may be disagreement on certain aspects of state airports in the communities, and we always try to respect the views of the community, we hope that there's one thing we can all agree upon. It's that airports must be safe. And in order to have a safe airport, it goes without saying that we must have safe airspace. So in an effort to clarify existing law and create a statewide resolution to address local airspace obstructions threatening public safety and to support continued airport operations, RIAC is seeking the support of the committee for the passage of H6067, what we call the Preservation of Safe Airspace Bill, which will improve airspace protection in coordination between local, state, and federal jurisdictions for publicly owned airports in the state. In the COVID-shortened 2020 session, this bill passed the Senate Judiciary Committee and the full Senate with overwhelming support, and we hope that this year it will be passed into law. And quite simply, we at the Airport Corporation and the community have an obligation to keep the airspace clear of hazards around the airport. The first line of defense to address airspace hazards is meant to be the enforcement of town zoning. However, such measures have not been implemented and or enforced at Westerly and Newport airports. As a second line of defense, the FAA steps in to offer to purchase trees and airspace easements, and typically that would be the purchase of a tree itself rather than just the trimming of trees, which will of course continue to grow. And usually most homeowners happily accept those offers to have the FAA purchase airspace easements and take care of the obstructing trees. But certain neighbors have declined to accept those offers, and that has resulted in nearly 5 years of litigation, which continues to languish in court while the obstructing trees continue to grow. So the Preservation of Safe Airspace Bill provides no new powers for the state, but will only clarify language in the law to make it abundantly clear that the state of Rhode Island remains able to mitigate airspace hazards and allow for the continued FAA funding essential for the continued safe operation of the airport, and of course, allow for future investments from the federal government in airport improvements, and of course, end the continued shortening of runways at Westerly and now Newport to keep pilots and the community safe. So H6067 provides a statewide resolution to this matter by clarifying state law. But I want to be clear that the bill is not an airport expansion bill, provides no new powers for the state, but will only clarify the language in the law to make clear that the Department of Transportation remains able to address those airspace hazards and allow for that continued FAA funding for the safe operation of the airports. Now, conversely, a failure to clarify and affirm existing state law could result in the reduction or elimination of federal funds that are required to maintain obstruction-free airspace. I want to thank the committee for their attention to this important bill. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. My colleague, Christine Vitt, Senior Vice President for Infrastructure for the Rhode Island Airport Corporation, is available to testify next on any technical aspects related to the FAA regulations on this important matter. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for John? Blake, recognize Leader Blake Filippi.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Goodman, is anyone here to talk about the technical aspects of this bill, the legal language of it?
Yes.
My colleague Christine Vitt can speak to the technical aspects of that and the FAA regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, she's coming up next. Do we have Christina around the phone?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question. My hand was up.
I apologize, Chairwoman. Deputy Speaker Lima, your question, please. You have the floor.
Yeah, I had a chairman, Mr. Goodman, but before I ask that question, I just wanted to correct a misstatement by Speaker Tempore Kennedy. He said that the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport was named after a state. Northern Kentucky is not only not a state, it's the third largest metropolitan area, as is Cincinnati. So thank you for making my argument for Providence. Hopefully you'll withdraw this ill-conceived bill. Thank you. Now, with my question. Okay, so Mr. Goodman, you're saying this legislation is needed because of the Westerly injunction making it impossible for you to get right out to condemn. Then how come in May of 2017, the same month of the temporary injunction, in the westerly tree abrogation, did RIAC seek immediate RIAC approval for an abrogation easement for TF Green Airport? And they received it. And yet Newport State Airport started in 2014, 3 years before Green, supposedly being frustrated by this westerly injunction.
Well, Representative, in any case where we can negotiate in good faith with homeowners and property owners to achieve a equitable agreement on those airspace easements, we try to move forward on that. It's matters where there is not agreement and that parties are not necessarily negotiating in good faith, where this is bogged down in litigation. And the recommendation of the court seems to be that a clarification in state law would help address this, and that is the nature of this bill. We accepted an amendment in the Senate last year that made clear this is to preserve and maintain the existing runways. Preserve, maintain, and restore an approach is the exact language that's in the bill. And so where we can, we do continue to work with homeowners, and hopefully we reach agreement.
And do you know the answer to what is RIDOT's position on this bill? I don't think they're here to testify.
This bill was formulated in conjunction with the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. They have affirmed, as we have, that there's no unintended consequences of this, and that they are in support of that. They're in support of the legislation.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I apologize. Is there any other questions for John? Representative Fung, you're recognized by the chair.
Thank you very much. I have a question. What's going on at Newport Airport in Middletown right now? Would you classify that, or there are attempts to expand the runway? Is that considered restoring an approach, or is that expanding an approach?
That would simply be, if we're able to address the airspace hazards, that would simply be restoring the the intended length of the runway. My colleague Christine Vitt will go into detail about what is entailed in the runway displacements that we need to move forward on to make sure that no planes are approaching hazards, effectively moving the runway, the start of the runway back a bit. But she can go into to more detail on that.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure it was clarified correctly. Thank you.
Sure.
Representative Phillips.
Thank you. Mr. Goodman, when you're taking down, are you taking the tree down totally? I think somebody was asking that question. Are you replacing it at another areas to keep our forestry up to, or are we just removing the trees and cutting down on our forestry?
My understanding is that, what we're trying to do here, and of course the localities are required by state law to have their own safe airspace easements. So the intent there is not to allow trees to continue to grow into the airspace. The FAA's preference would be that, yes, we do take down, it's usually a single tree on a property, and replace that with something that maybe is not going to grow as tall or as fast. But that's something that can be discussed with the homeowners as well.
Is that what you do, though, is discuss it with the homeowners and say, we want to take this tree down because it's growing too tall, but we want to replace it with this tree here?
I can't necessarily speak to specifics here, but this is all intended to be good faith negotiations between the property owners and RIAC regarding this FAA program. And again, in 99% of the cases, that is certainly what happens. It's just a very, very small number that have resulted in litigation, which has held our ability to address some of these more serious airspace obstructions over the last 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Is there any other questions for John?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Deputy Speaker Lima.
Thank you. Mr. Goodman, Yes, are you saying this bill is needed because of the lawsuit in Wesley, which supposedly prevents you from cutting the trees so the airports can land safely? Is that correct?
Our legal team is actually very confident that we will prevail in court. It's simply a matter that this has continued to languish in court, and there certainly could be an appeal no matter what the findings. So, again, the longer this goes on, the taller trees grow, and the more we're going to have to shorten runways just to make sure that we are in compliance with our federal obligations, our grant obligations, and most importantly, keep everyone safe. That is the most important thing.
So when the Westerly injunction came in about 2017, that was prior to the president, Ithaca Ahmad, correct?
I believe so. I believe this predates President Ahmad, yes.
Okay, so when he was brought in, what did he do about the Westerly problem? And I understand there was a problem in Newport. What did he do?
Well, again, as I mentioned, we engage in good faith negotiations with all homeowners. The Westerly litigation was already in process at that point. An injunction had come down, and that has now impacted Newport Airport as well. So a clarification of the law would help address this situation. We remain very confident that we will prevail in the court case, but that might take a significant amount of time to run through any appeal process.
Isn't it true he decided not to pursue the Westerly problem because he would have to spend the money from RIAC, but he wanted the city and towns to pay?
That's not my understanding. I'm happy to look into the specifics if you to your question, but that's not my understanding.
Well, isn't it true that he received federal funds for the removal of these landing obstacles? And did he use that money for removal of these trees?
Well, again, Representative, this has been held up by litigation. So the ability to move forward and address those airspace hazards has been constrained by the legislation.
That was not my question.
Yeah, if we could stick to the bill on this one, the language of the bill.
I am sticking to the bill. That's what the bill's all about. Isn't it true the FAA found out he was using the funds for other purposes and made him give the money back?
Deputy Speaker Lima, I'm reading the bill here, and I don't see what section of the bill that exists in. If you could just keep it to the bill, if there's a question.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's about the removal of trees and the way they're purporting to do it through this legislation and why they need this legislation. And what I'm trying to point out is why that seems to be a lot of malarkey. And why isn't anybody from, why isn't Mr. Ithaca or somebody from the board here?
Representative Lima, I can tell you that the answer to your question is no. In fact, I would actually point you back to the many audits that have been conducted, the oversight by the FAA, all of which has exceptionally positive things to say about the very strong management. And this is a quote, very strong management in governance with a good track record of operating major lines of business and managing risk. This is all out there as public information. We have very positive reviews, and of course, as you know, the RIAC and TS Green Airport have received accommodations as one of the best airports in the nation. So no, there has been no inappropriate use of any federal funds. Now, if we are unable to move forward with the use of federal funds to purchase airspace easements, yes, the federal government is going to ask for those funds back, and we are in fact jeopardizing further federal funding if we do not address this as a state. 49 other states are able to address airspace hazards. We want to make sure that Rhode Island can do that as well.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, we'll go next to Christine Vitt from the Rhode Island Airport Corporation. Christine, you may proceed with your testimony. Christine, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, committee members. I'm Christine Vitt, Senior Vice President and Chief Infrastructure Officer for the Rhode Island Airport Corporation. Similar to the Federal Highway Administration, which requires safety on roadways in order to receive federal highway funding, the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, requires safety in our airspace in order for us to receive federal airport funding. And when we cannot comply with FAA grant assurances, airport operations as well as federal airport funding become in jeopardy. In 2020, RIAC completed an aerial airspace analysis at all 6 airports across Rhode Island, including T.F. Green Airport. And we have many existing obstructions and near obstructions which we need to address. And near obstructions are those that will soon be obstructions if not mitigated. When obstructions to the airspace are present and we are unable to remove or mitigate them, our only recourse, short of closing runways, is to reduce the runway lengths. And when we reduce the runway lengths, while we may temporarily mitigate the obstruction, we're also diminishing the utility of the airport. Slide 2 in our submitted testimony contains a diagram which demonstrates how airplane landing approaches need to shift, or what we call displace, to mitigate an obstruction. Displacement has already occurred at 3 runway ends in Westerly Airport and is now scheduled to occur this month at runway 4 end at Newport State Airport. The runway 422 at Newport will be displaced by 499 feet. This decreases the available runway length from 2,999 feet to 2,500 feet. Displacing runways is a serious issue, which is not taken lightly by RIAC, the FAA, or any of our stakeholders. These displacements are only taking place to mitigate obstruction issues to ensure that our airspace is safe. It is our hope these displacements will be temporary, but without action, this pattern will only continue to worsen. We want to be clear that several things will continue to occur if this legislation is not passed. First, runway usability and airport utility at all airports within Rhode Island may continue to diminish. This means our airports will become less attractive to aviation stakeholders and airport users. And second, without the ability to mitigate, trees, of course, will continue to grow, and at some point, displacing is no longer an option. At this point, the only remaining option is, unfortunately, runway closure. Third, with temporary displacements, the problems are compounded as navigational aids used by pilots for times when there's inclement weather or night operations those navigational aids are often taken out of service. It is important to note that this is a statewide issue. It not only affects our general aviation community, but this issue could also affect T.F. Green Airport. As mentioned, the situation also puts federal funding to maintain our airports in jeopardy. In October 2016, RIAC received $92,000 in reimbursement from the FAA for design work that we did for obstruction removal. Due to our inability to mitigate because of the things that we're talking about here tonight, this money had to be returned to FAA in 2019. Returning grant money to the FAA is rare, especially within the aviation industry. The FAA is not going to want to fund an airport that is in the process of diminishing its utility. Please know that the National Transportation Security Bureau investigated a fatal mid-air collision at Westerly State Airport that occurred back in 2003. One factor related to the accident that was determined to be, and I quote, the obscured visibility of the traffic pattern from the air and ground by trees located at the departure end of the runway. In closing, having obstructions in airspace can be hazardous. If we're going to have airports in Rhode Island, we need to ensure that we have safe airspace, and this bill will help ensure that that is the case. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Leader Filippi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for testifying. Briefly, I use the Westerly Airport all the time. We have to trim the trees. The fact we're sitting here years after the problem came to light, still talking about it, it doesn't make sense. But we have to do it the right way. So I have some questions on this bill real quick, please. Why are we amending the Airport Zoning Act in 132 and not just amending the Airport Act in 131? I want to make sure I get my numbers right. Excuse me. The beginning of the bill, Yeah, 1, 2, 3, right? I'm sorry, let me start over. The beginning of the bill amends 1, 2, 3, and that makes sense to me. I'm trying to understand why we're amending the municipal zoning portion of airport regulation in 1, 3, 2. If you can explain that, please.
Yeah, so we are clarifying by adding approach to the definition of airport to support, as you said, the 1-2-3.1. And then we're also adding in department to the definition of political subdivision so that it clarifies that RIDOT is a department of the state of Rhode Island, thus giving RIDOT clear authority within the airport zoning statute.
So essentially, you're putting RIDOT on par with the municipalities in the airport zoning statute by including them in the definition of political subdivision, correct?
Yes.
So could the purposes of this bill be accomplished without changing the Airport Zoning Act and just changing 1, 2, 3? I don't understand why we're changing both. It seems like we can accomplish everything we want by changing 1, 2 instead of 1, 3.
Yeah, I believe the lawyers, because of the ongoing litigation, would argue that it needs to be changed in the airport zoning for clarification as well.
Okay, so can they submit some type of opinion to this committee so we can understand why both chapters need to be changed? Because I don't understand why, and I see it broadening the powers of RIDOT beyond what is needed for the purpose of this legislation.
Certainly, we can have somebody submit something in addition, but it is intended to only clarify that RIDOT has the authority, which we believe they already do by clarifying the definition of political subdivision, adding the word department to it.
Yep, I agree. I understand what the intent is. I want to make sure that the legal language matches up and is just limited to that intent.
Leader
So,
Filippi, if I may just interrupt you for a moment, just point of clarification. Are you talking about 1, 3, 4 and just adding the language for planning?
hold on.
Or are you
wait.
talking about section 123.1?
I'm talking about, nope, I'm talking about
132. Okay.
132.
Got it.
That's page 3, line 22 through 25. I don't understand the purpose of adding that language if we have it in the prior chapter of the law, and I just need to understand why, please.
Yes, you may proceed with your questions. Yeah.
That's all. If you could just copy me my state email address on that submission, please, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Deputy Speaker Lima.
Okay, hi. RIAC is claiming that the existing statute needs the word approaches added to it, and somehow that affects RIDOC's ability to clear the obstruction, the trees at all its airports, correct?
Yes, this is for all airports.
Okay, but how come, here's what I'm not understanding. How come in May of 2017, the same month they received a temporary injunction in Westerly, tree abrogation easement, which they claim is the reason for the need for the bill 6067, RIDOC staff sought an immediate board approval for an abrogation easement at TF Green and received it. So how
I think
come
it's
they were
more,
able to do it without this legislation?
Yeah, so that was an ongoing process prior to the injunction being in place. So that was one reason. The other reason is TF Green is a commercial airport, and they were just coming off of a major runway expansion. So things had been moving on that for quite a while. So once anything new after the injunction was put in place has not started or occurred.
I thought every airport was treated the same, but then how come with the Westerly temporary injunction, which was not an issue for the abrogation easement, yet the abrogation easement in Newport Airport, which was started in 2014, 3 years before TF Green, are being frustrated by the Westerly injunction. It just doesn't make sense. And Ithaca Ahmad stopped pursuing the Westerly injunction, which makes even less sense.
So once the injunction was issued, then our ability to take the abrogation easements once the voluntary process stalled, all of that stopped. So there was nothing that occurred from that point forward. And that's what we've been trying to work through ever since 2017 to resolve the litigation, and that's still ongoing today.
But you could have gotten relief like you did for TF Green from the board.
No, we don't believe that's the case.
I'm confused about. I'm sorry?
If we could
I'm sorry.
just narrow this down to not litigation, but rather the legislation at hand in the language. Are there any further questions? Did you have another question, Deputy Speaker Lima? Are you sure? I think your microphone's off. All right. Thank you. All right. And thank you for your testimony, Christine. Next, we will go to Gregory Masad from Messier, Masad and Burdick, signed up in opposition. Gregory, you're before the House Committee on Corporations. You may proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Solomon and Corporation Committee members, for the ability to address H6067. I'm Gregory Masson, an attorney with Messier, Masson, Burdick, and Flynn with offices in East Greenwich. I represent several residents and property owners surrounding Newport State Airport and Westerly State Airport, and I am testifying in opposition to H6067. The legislature in the state of Rhode Island has never given eminent domain power to RIAC, and for good reason. RIAC is an unelected and unaccountable public-private corporation. So the real question for you today as committee members is, would you give RIAC unfettered eminent domain powers directly? If not, then don't give it to them through this backdoor legislation, because that's simply what it is. Although not under oath, I assume testimony before this committee as well as the documents submitted are given with the truth in mind. And today, RIAC submitted a statement and testimony previous to mine. And frankly, I'm troubled because there is a lot of misinformation. The main misrepresentation in it, not only once, is that this bill gives no new power to the state. And that's flat out wrong and a blatant misrepresentation to this committee. I'm a licensed and practicing attorney in the state of Rhode Island, and I stand behind the truth of my statements submitted here and the documents I submitted. RIAC has proposed to change what appears to be innocuous language in the statute governing RIDOT and airports, which is misleading, as the real change is giving the power of eminent domain to RIAC, plain and simple. And that is the issue in the litigation. The documents I submitted earlier today provide the backdrop, and I would hope you would take a look at them. But succinctly, Title I, Chapter 2 gives the power to RIDOT for land, for airports, and the benefit of RIAC. Title I, Chapter 3, the Airport Zoning Act, gives the power to control areas surrounding airports to political subdivisions, as only towns control zoning. And this statutory framework was specifically delineated in 1999, and I submitted that amendment in my package to you earlier today. RIAC and airport operators and RIAC's predecessors were specifically taken out of the definition of political subdivisions, and therefore someone who had eminent domain authority concerning air rights surrounding the airport. The statutory framework in Rhode Island is RIAC runs the airport, RIDOT owns the airports, and the local towns control what happens around the airport. That's done across this country. And for the statement to be made that 49 other states handle their obstructions and Rhode Island doesn't is just simply not true. What is being proposed on page 3, line 22 of this bill changes the definition of political subdivision, allowing RIDOT and ultimately RIAC all the powers of the municipalities under the Airport Zoning Act, including the ability to control and override municipal zoning and the ability to use eminent domain for air rights, something they do not have today. By changing the definition of political subdivision, it also provides powers under 1-35, 1-3-6, 1-3-10, 1-3-14, and 1-3-17. These additional powers to RIAC directly contradict their statement of testimony about no new power being included in this bill. On page 1, lines 6 and 7, This bill adds to the powers of RIDOT and ultimately RIAC, giving them eminent domain powers for air rights and powers under 123 that have to this point been reserved to the cities and towns, and that is maintaining approach zones off of airport property. Again, giving them power directly contradicting their statement. I would ask that you please see my written submission for support of this position and how it relates to previous legislative amendments. There is currently a well-reasoned statutory framework to accomplish the goal of safe approaches, and it should remain that way. It is a cooperation between RIAC and the municipalities, which works well. This bill would give all the power to RIAC and take any and all land use control away from the towns. Please see my written submission as well, which includes information about the town of Middletown and the city of Warwick objections to this bill. Interestingly, the testimony or the written documentation that was submitted today by RIAC indicates it takes a village. The problem with that statement is that this legislation eliminates the village. The village includes the towns, and it includes the residents and the property owners around the airports. This will preclude the residents and the business owners and the citizens and the towns from having a seat at the table with respect to any developments at the airport. And I don't mean physical development, but runway expansion, lowering the thresholds, actual development at the airport. And it takes the towns and the cities right out of the equation, because they may still have the power in 1-3, but if RIAC has the power under this bill in 1-2, it doesn't really matter. The Airport Zoning Act will be moot. And that is unintended consequence of this bill. And one comment about what it is, whether it's clearing one tree and replacing one tree, understand that abrogation easements provide for not what you want to do, but what you can do with the easement. And the easements that they have put forward and that are at issue in litigation allows for a clear cut of the property. It allows for the landing of aircraft, the dust, the vibrations, the fumes, etc., down to the ground. And that's something that, when you actually get involved in the case and the facts come out, you see this. And that's where the court has seen, and that's why we are where we are.
Gregory, going back to the 1999 legislation, was there a House bill as well? I see the Senate 557. I see the Senate 557 substitute B that you provided.
That's the actual passed bill, I think.
Yeah, that's the passed bill, but you don't know if there was a House duplicate at that time?
I don't. I tried to locate the sponsor of the bill. I believe he may be deceased. My search came up empty because I wanted to see what the history of that was. I believe it came out of Warwick in terms of not allowing unfettered eminent domain power to what's basically a private-public corporation. And that's the question for the committee members, because that's what you're going to do. And is that what you want to do? The Commerce Corporation, in this enabling statute for RIAC, didn't include the eminent domain powers for RIAC, and RIAC has acknowledged that. The Home and Business Protection Act didn't allow specifically for RIAC to have condemnation powers. The Airport Zoning Act specifically excluded RIAC or airport operators from having eminent domain power. And this is all going to be overturned by passage of this bill and the mooting of the Airport Zoning Act. I think that's why you see the two towns opposed to the bill. And I think as the information comes out again this year, I think you're going to get more opposition from one or two more towns because they realize that they've been kicked out of the room in terms of any discussions about what happens at the airports.
Thank you.
Let me just give you.
Thank you for your testimony. I did look up, and it does look like Senator Bedeau had passed, but was a senator from the city of Woonsocket. So may have been a Northern Rhode Island issue that may have prompted that 1999 legislation. If we can just go to questions. Are there any questions for the witness? Deputy Speaker Lima.
I want to thank you very much for your testimony. I'm not an attorney, but that's what I was trying to get to the guts of the bill. the initial concept to allow our airports to be safer, to have the trees trimmed. That's absolutely fine. But what the pertinent information I was trying to bring up, and maybe you could at some later date respond to some of the questions I asked, because I don't think I was getting forthcoming answers to. I think there's a lot of misinformation, and I think what I'm hearing you say is, correct me if I'm wrong, this legislation has a much deeper intent where it's taking away from our municipalities the control over what's going on in their cities and towns and giving this power of eminent domain to an unelected body. And that disturbs me. And with that question, I would ask you, would this also change who would be paying for the cutting of these trees? Would that go to the municipalities as opposed to RIAC?
If the bill passes?
Yes.
Well, if the bill passes, the RIAC or however they get their funding, that's been a tough question to get answered as to who has been funding this, but they would have to pay for it. But they could also pay, that's where it takes a village. They could also pay for the town to use the town's process under the Airport Zoning Act to eliminate these issues as well. Please understand, I represent the people closest to the airport. There's nobody in the state that wants safer airports than the people who live right next to the runways. This is not about necessarily safety. This is about eminent domain and overreaching power of a non-elected body. They don't want to close the airports. They moved in near the airports. But what RIAC wants to do is completely clear-cut these properties. And so they're left naked without any protections and a full release and the right to use their property without buying their property. That's what this bill allows RIAC to do. Make no mistake about it. If you would give that to them directly, then you would support the bill. If you would not give RIAC eminent domain power directly, as it's historically been, then you would vote against it.
Thank you. Oh. Deputy Speaker Lima?
I just wanted to ask one last question. If this legislation were to pass as worded, and I understand Westerly is still in court, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It has no effect on the court case.
So
I have 5 people. If this bill passes, hundreds of properties are going to be affected, including the 5 that I represent. But this is going to affect hundreds of properties. If you look at the proposed approach zones by RIAC and what they wanted to do in Westerly, and Westerly shot it down and came up with their own airport hazard overlay district, you would be shocked at the number of properties affected by their plans. And so, it's not going to affect the court case. I just know about all of this because I've been involved in this litigation for 5 years, and I know the danger of this bill. But it's going to affect hundreds of properties just in Westerly. Then you have Middletown, and then you have Warwick, and you have,
Gregory.
North Kingstown, you have Smithfield, you have all these different places.
Gregory, hypothetical situation, if if the amendments to the definition section of this bill were removed, would you still be opposed to it?
Well, I think yes, I would, because what it does is it still takes the power in 1-3, the Airport Zoning Act, and moves it to 1-2-3 by allowing approach. Because what the statute says now is RIDOT has the power to take land that's designed and set aside for airports. And what they are doing is allowing land set aside for approaches, which they determine what their approaches are. And that approach designation and that approach protection is in the Airport Zoning Act. So, I don't know why they want to change 1-3, but the harm is also in changing 1-2-3 because they're taking that power from 1-3, the Airport Zoning Act, and moving it to 1-2.
Thank you. Leader Filippi.
Thank you. I share some of the same skepticism, but my question is, if the system's working, why haven't the trees been cut? If the community-village relationship is working, why do we have a portion of the airport closed?
I can tell you that. I chuckled, and I'm glad I wasn't on a live mic when they said that they negotiate in good faith. They absolutely do not. And I hate to take such a strong position, but if you have ever talked to anybody, any resident at any airport that has dealt with RIAC and their representatives, they will laugh if you tell them that RIAC has acted in good faith or negotiated in good faith. And they haven't acted in good faith and communicated with the towns that they need to cooperate with. They've made their own bet, and they should be more amenable to working with the towns so that the process of the towns protecting the approach zones works. The process is there. They just don't want to deal with it.
Well, let me give you a hypothetical. I'm so sorry. I know it's late. Let me give you a hypothetical, though. Suppose you have a landowner who doesn't care about money, would not negotiate, just says, I love my trees, I'm going to let them continue to grow. How would those trees be cut now if the person wasn't willing to talk?
Well, when the town controls the zoning and the trees are in violation of the zoning, then the police power of the town, just like any sort of, if I build a deck that's against zoning, they can come in with police power and rip it down.
So has
they can come in
town
and tear the trees down.
Has the town of Westerly not exercised its zoning authority and police powers over the trees that are shortening the runway?
Well, right, they have not. But, presently the framework, and it's always been, is that the towns have that say. Because what happens in Westerly is they want to lower the ability of the planes to come in closer to the homes. Westerly has always been a visual approach runway. And what they want to do is make it an instrument, a precision runway, where that the faster, the more modern planes with all the electronics can come in complete fog because they're relying on instruments rather than visual approach. They can still visually approach Westerly Airport, and they always will be able to. These trees will never affect a visual approach.
Understand.
But
and so your position is basically that the town of Westerly should be able to make those decisions about what type of approaches they have. I just want to understand it. I'm not disagreeing. I just want to understand.
No, absolutely. And they are not against the airport. I believe they may be against this bill, but they're not against the airport. But they don't want to be shut out of the room either.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. We have received written testimony in favor from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association in favor. We've received written testimony in favor from the Rhode Island Airport Corporation, and then we've received a written testimony opposed from Gregory Massad, who we just heard from. And that concludes the hearing on House Bill 6067. Is there a motion to adjourn? Made, seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you.